Slavery in the UK was abolished in 1865, but now it's back, and this time it has a new name: renting. Renters in countries like Australia are being pushed to the limit, with out of control rent surges, shockingly low vacancy levels, which means they're always one step away from homelessness, and next to no chance of being able to break out of the cycle and afford their own home. How is Australia just sitting back and allowing renters to become slaves for life? I'm Biko Konstantinos, and that's what we're going to talk about today. What's Whitney Houston's favorite type of coordination? Hand up! We'll always love you, baby. And speaking of coordination, see if you can hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. I'll keep you up to date on the markets and all the big stuff affecting your life. Now let's check out the new form of slavery.
Sydney's rental madness has hit a new low, with an enclosed balcony in the city advertised for more than $350 a week.
Fancy living on a tiny balcony in Sydney for $350 a week, having to share all the other facilities with other people? This is renting in Australia, baby. But it hasn't always been like this. Yes, rents have always been high, but check out this graph of capital city asking rent prices. From 2010 all the way through till 2019, rent prices, although still very expensive, grew quite gradually in Australia. So we've got a decade of rental prices for houses here and a decade of rent prices for units, and their rises during that time were quite orderly, as in fairly consistent. But then COVID hit, we saw a small dip in rent prices, but look what happened next. Ridiculous, uncontrolled rental inflation. So what happened to cause this catastrophe for renters? The first thing that happened was unprecedented global lockdowns due to COVID. The requirement to distance yourselves and the exponential rise in working from home meant that people required more space, which initially saw less people living in each dwelling. This created the first wave of demand for housing. Then we had ridiculous over-the-top COVID stimulus, which basically flooded the entire economy with so much excess money that it had to go somewhere. And whenever there's excess money in Australia, you know where it's gonna go. Right up property's pie hole. COVID stimulus seemed to want to protect house prices at all costs, and boy did they succeed. Next we have the RBA reducing interest rates to almost zero, and then lo and behold, forecasting that rates wouldn't be raised until 2024, which was 3 years after COVID. So we had a decade of slowly reducing interest rates, then everyone was told they'd stay at zero for 3 years. For a country like Australia that's obsessed with property, just imagine the effect. Well, we don't have to imagine, because we saw crazy speculative fear of missing out demand enter the housing market. But astonishingly, the RBA couldn't see it because they kept forecasting no rate rises for another 12 months. And when house prices surge astronomically, rent prices come along for the ride. Then, due to out of control inflation, we saw interest rates start to rise sharply and the building sector start to collapse, which saw much fewer developments. Then we saw house prices start to decline quite sharply, but the government came to the rescue with mass uncontrolled immigration. So pumping crazy immigration levels in the midst of a very tight rental market caused absolute chaos and reduced Australia's rental vacancy rates to under 1%. Now these levels are basically unheard of and unseen in Australia, and they created a Hunger Games scenario which saw massive crazy demand and saw rent prices surge astronomically. Combine that with lower housing stocks due to the rise of Airbnb and also vacant properties from rich Australians and rich foreigners, then you end up with a complete betrayal of anyone who doesn't own their own home. So let's consider what renters are now facing and why they're at massive risk of becoming slaves for life. Firstly, rents are so ridiculously high that the money people pay to rent is a huge percentage of their overall income. Spending over 30% of your wage on rent is an indicator of rental stress. But currently, huge numbers of Australians are spending over 40 or even 50% of their wages just on their rent. And this leaves them very little to spend on other necessities and even less to try and save for a home deposit. So unless you're able to live with your parents and pay minimal rent, you're out of pocket. Even if you share, is going to be a huge amount of your wages. On top of this, you've got insane cost of living, where the prices of goods and services have doubled and even tripled in some circumstances. Non-property owners, i.e. renters, have very few options to claim tax concessions. You basically get taxed on your wages and then taxed on everything else you buy. Homeowners pay absolutely no capital gains tax on their principal place of residence, and property investors can claim negative gearing and capital gains tax discounts. So property owners are supported by ultra generous tax concessions along with government and central bank policies that create massive demand, which ensures that they prosper financially. But on the other hand, renters are falling further and further behind as rent prices and cost of living rise way faster than their actual wages. So it's increasingly difficult for renters to be able to buy their own home, especially considering that the Demographia Housing Report classes most of Australia's capital cities as impossibly unaffordable. So many renters will be forced to stay in the rental rat race all their lives, meaning they'll most likely have to work longer, rely on the government to hopefully get an age pension or something like that, and even in retirement probably have to share with many other pensioners. And even if they can overcome the massive challenges in front of them and get into the housing market, their mortgages are going to be so large that many people will end up retiring with large amounts owing on their home loans. When you prioritize housing as a way to increase wealth rather than ensuring all Australians have safe and secure shelter, then you're basically pushing all non-homeowners into financial slavery. And unless things improve, they could be slaves for life. In Australia's property-obsessed political landscape, there's really been very little concern for this rental crisis. Considering the absolutely shocking rental market, you'd think there'd be drastic concern and immediate action taken to ease the situation for renters. But alas, they don't give a rat's ass. However, the Greens political party do seem to be fighting for renters and have been calling for a rental freeze for a long time now. They've just released new figures outlining how much this rental freeze would save renters, so we're going to check out a recent segment on the project where this was discussed.
As the rental crisis continues to bite, shock new research has today revealed the controversial measure that could save struggling renters billions.
Yes, a rent freeze in Australia would be extremely controversial, especially considering the power that the property industry has in this country. I mean, look at what happened when Bill Shorten tried to reform tax concessions. If you even think of doing anything that jeopardizes the housing Ponzi, you're in massive trouble.
Almost $4 billion. That's how much Aussie renters in capital cities could have kept in their pockets if rents had been frozen a year ago.
That crazy figure is indicative of the ridiculous rental surges that renters have been facing. It proves just how out of balance the Australian housing market is. You see, when there's a balanced market, both property investors and renters have an equal share of power. That means that property investors need renters to make sure they get income, as well as renters needing a place to live. But when demand goes supersonic due to a lack of supply, that balance goes totally out of whack. Landlords have all the power and basically can do whatever they want regarding rent prices because renters have so little power, they're just trying to survive.
There is a rent tsunami facing renters over the next 2 years. If we do not have a freeze on rent increases, we could see hundreds of thousands of renters shoved into eviction or financial stress.
He's right about that. Renters are now facing the terrible consequences of decades of policies designed to create massive speculative demand into into housing. And I believe something does need to happen for those who don't own their own home, but I'm not convinced that it's rent freezes. What non-homeowners really need is affordable housing, because then many more people could get out of the rental rat race, own their own home so they have housing security. And the fastest way to make housing more affordable is to reduce the demand. The government wants to do this by increasing supply of housing. However, that takes a long time, and they're currently way behind their target and at risk of not even being close. But something that would immediately reduce demand and ease this rental crisis would be to drastically reduce immigration levels. That would see a sharp increase in the rental vacancy rate, and as soon as that happens, rent price rises will be much slower because renters will have much more power, enabling them to pick and choose what they want to rent, including how much they're willing to pay. After reducing immigration, we must ban foreign ownership of Australian property. Why on earth would we allow wealthy foreigners to park their cash in Australian property when our own citizens are being royally screwed over and pushed towards poverty? It makes absolutely no sense other than to increase overall demand and boost house prices. Then we need to reform housing tax concessions so they don't encourage insane speculation into housing. Keep interest rates at reasonable levels, which isn't too low, so that excess leverage into housing isn't encouraged. And then scrap all fake band-aid solutions like First Homeowners Grant, which just adds extra demand and makes housing more expensive. Do all that and we'll have a much more balanced and free housing market. And then those current debt slaves for life can hope for a much better financial future. I'm Biko Konstantinos.